Hey guys, welcome back to another one of my Salem videos, and in this episode we're going to be talking about poisons of a few kinds. So poisoning is something that is a part of Salem, especially considering you're part of the natural world and also other people trying to poison you, and considering the flora and fauna you might be encountering. So as you can see, I've got a collection of mushrooms at the back there, and we're going to be going over the mushroom stuff. Then there's also some snake stuff, and then there's some other things that you should be aware of. So first of all, let's start with the mushrooms. As you can see in my inventory here, I have a collection of mushrooms. I've got a witch's hat, a waxing toadstool, a yellow morel, a lobster mushroom, sugar caps, and a waning toadstool, which is a little bit more rare, and some of you may not have seen that already. But in terms of mushrooms, if you were to eat one straight up, you are going to get mushroom poisoning, which is not so much of a big deal, but it can be rather annoying. So what it does is it lowers your maximum biles temporarily, and particularly witches' hats, they're really bad at this. But also the usual waxing toadstools, sometimes when you pick it up, you're gonna get a waning toadstool instead. And it actually says here, your skill in herbs and sprouts has allowed you to determine that this particular mushroom is a waning rather than a waxing toadstool. The waning toadstool is significantly more poisonous than its more common cousin. So if your herbs and sprouts skill, let's see, the herbs and sprouts, which is this one with the symbol of a pot there, if it's too low, you won't be able to identify that it's a waning toadstool, and it'll just display as a waxing toadstool. And if you eat it, you might be really badly poisoned. So there's a few poisonous mushrooms out there, but then there are also safe mushrooms. So the poisonous ones you have to look out for is the witch's hat, which is this blackish dark one, the waxing toadstool, which is the red one, the waning toadstool, which is the red one with the white spots on it, the yellow morel, which is this sort of tallish yellowy one. And then there's also one called a spooky red cap. The spooky red cap doesn't happen in the wild, it happens randomly through gardening. So if you see my pots back there, they might randomly, any of these mushrooms might randomly become a spooky red cap. And a spooky red cap is slightly different because it can't be boiled. Besides that, I'm not sure if there's any special uses for it. Maybe it's something used in witchcraft or something like that, but I'm not too sure. I would assume so though. But besides that, there are some safe mushrooms. There's the lavender bloat, which is that purple one in the background. I've also got a lobster mushroom and sugar caps, and these you can eat readily straight away, no problem. Just right click, eat, and it's fine. But if you eat any of these poisonous ones, let's say this waxing toadstool, I'm gonna go ahead and eat this one right here. There we go. It's got 14 minutes left of shroom poisoning, and my maximum biles has all been dropped by a few points. So if you eat a lot of these, your biles could drop really low, but the bars don't change because these bars are relative to the maximum. So when the maximum drops, then the shroom poisoning, it's sort of like this hidden disease, but it does have an icon in the top left. And 14 minutes from a single mushroom, if you eat a few, the witch's hats and stuff like that, it could easily go up to hours. So you gotta be careful about that. Now, another thing about shroom poisoning that you have to be aware of is if you cook food with poisonous mushrooms, the poisoning will transfer to the food, and there's no way of knowing. So for example, I have these shroom rolls over here, which is made by some mushrooms, hickory nuts, and leaves of colewort, so cabbage leaves here. These shroom rolls, you have no idea if they are poisonous or not. For all you know, I made them with 2 unprepared witches' hats, and if you eat it, you're gonna get an hour or maybe more of shroom poisoning. So, lesson learned, don't eat food handed to you from strangers. They could easily, especially mushroom foods, they could easily have it poisoned, and it's going to be really annoying like that. Imagine some waning toadstools hidden in there. So how do you avoid this shroom poisoning? Well, you gotta boil your shrooms. So the first thing you gotta do is have a fireplace, which we know how to do. So I've already got my fire going there, and you need a clay pot. So if you go to craft, tools, pots and pans, next to the gardening pot is a clay pot, and it just takes 5 bits of clay to create an unburnt clay pot, which you can then fire in your kiln. So that kiln over there in the top right of the screen there. So just like the gardening pot, you want to fire your unburnt clay pot in the kiln. But for if you don't have a kiln, you can actually fire the clay pot over a fireplace. You just open the fireplace, put the unburnt clay pot straight in there, and it will actually fire it. But over a fireplace, there's a chance of it breaking. So there's that. So if you can somehow get, if you can get 5 bits of clay before you're able to actually make clay with the clay trough down here, then you should, well, just be prepared that your clay pot might not turn out so well. So then what you need to do is, once you have a clay pot, I've got one here, you need to fill it with water. So I have a bucket of water here, but it's kind of low. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk down to the river and fill up this clay pot with water. Alright, here we are at the riverside, and you can fill up the clay pot just like a bucket. You can left click it and right click on the shallow water. Be careful not to misclick and drop your clay pot in there. But if you happen to have a bucket of water, so I'm going to fill my bucket of water here. So it's got 10 liters of water in my bucket. If you happen to have a bucket of water on hand, you can actually just left click the bucket of water and right click on the clay pot. And you can see the bucket of water went down by 5 liters, and now my clay pot has 5 liters of water in it. So you can actually stock up on water. So here I'm gonna fill my bucket of water up with up to 10 liters again. So I have 15 liters of water in my inventory. I'm becoming encumbered here. But you can actually fill up your clay pot multiple ways like that. So now I'm gonna head back to the base and show you how to boil these mushrooms. Alright, here we are, home sweet home, and now that we have a clay pot full of water, I'm gonna left click the clay pot and right click the fireplace. And there we go, we've put down the clay pot above the fireplace, and now if you right click the clay pot above the fireplace, it gives you 2 options to open and take it. Take it will put it back into your inventory like that. Opening will actually open it as a separate inventory. So there we go, there's 4 slots inside a clay pot, and all you have to do is put the mushrooms you want to boil inside. So there we go, I put the witch's hat, the waning toadstool, and the yellow morel inside the clay pot, and you can't put the lobster mushroom or the sugar caps inside because they're safe to eat. They don't have shroom poisoning, so they're fine. And you just have to wait a little while, not too long, and eventually the graphic will change, and so will their name. So you can see here I have a boiled witch's hat, and the graphic is a bit more steamy looking, and also it says boiled. And this is now safe to eat and safe to use in your cooking. And you can see there's sort of a clock wipe animation showing the progress of these mushrooms. It's already going there, so that's no problem. And as you can see here, my shroom poisoning is starting to wear off, and the maximum is going back up, but you can see my biles are not regenerating. So even though the maximum is going back to where it's supposed to be, the actual drain on all 4 of my biles affected by the shroom poisoning, well, I have to eat some food to regenerate that. Oh, but I should mention there is actually one way to cure shroom poisoning, where if you can go into craft potions and medicine, you should have berry mash laxative. And it says here, the berry mash laxative removes the effects of shroom poisoning within an hour or so, unfortunately draining your black bile in the process as well as causing intermittent spells of flatulence. So yes, it's not entirely a pleasant experience, but you can quite easily craft this with any 6 berries and 2 myrtle oak leaves. So if you have those on hand, you can go ahead and craft a berry mash laxative, and that's going to be helpful in removing any kind of shroom poisoning. Anyway, so that covers mushrooms. Now, the other kind of poisoning that you're probably going to encounter is the kind that you get from timber rattlers, which are the snakes of Salem. Now, timber rattlers are still, at this point, should be relatively easy for you to hunt. They're hunted, you can hunt them exactly the same way you do for crickets and rabbits. You throw a piece of flint at them using your slingshot, and then you stomp them when they almost get to you. And just for timber rattlers, you should be able to try to stomp them before they actually reach you. So for example, if you see my mouse cursor here, if the timber rattler is heading to you, press the stomp button about at this distance. So by the time the timber rattler reaches you, he gets stomped. And at 20 biles, they should be killed in one stomp after the slingshot hits them. But if anything, the stomp will stun them and you can go ahead and stomp them again. It's a bit more risky because if a timber rattler attacks you, you might get their poison. And Timber Rattler poison is, well, it's a bit more serious than shroom poisoning. The Timber Rattler will actually poison you, and you have to have a cure to cure yourself of Timber Rattler poisoning. And what will happen is one of your bowels will drain until it's 0 and you'll pass out. So again, animals aren't really capable of murdering your character, but they are able to send your bowels down to 0, and when you pass out, all your inventory drops on the ground, which is a huge inconvenience. And so it's still really, really bad. And to deal with Timber Rattler poisoning, you need to be able to craft or buy the cure, which is here, the Rattler Serum. And the Rattler Serum is a little difficult to obtain, but it does come with 10 uses, which is quite good. So what it needs is an Etterfang, a garlic, and 2 oakworth. So garlic and oakworth, if you've done your gardening, you can actually grow these things no problem. I got a garlic growing over there. You just plant some wild garlic and it'll become normal garlic. Oakworth you can also find quite easily. The Etterfang, however, is the problem. The Etterfang comes from the snakes themselves, and as you can see, I did try hunting some snakes. I got a raw Timber Rattler cut here and a raw Timber Rattler skin. But the Etterfang is a rare drop, so I couldn't actually get an Etterfang on me. Alternatively, you can actually buy Rattler Serum from the default stalls in Providence, but it costs 250 silver, so that's rather expensive. But the good thing about the Rattler Serum is once you have a Rattler Serum, then you don't have to worry about hunting Timber Rattlers. And hunting Timber Rattlers is sort of really good, because they drop one of the best items in the game, which is the Whispering Snake Skull. The Whispering Snake Skull being an item of high value by a lot of players, so whether you want to sell it or use it, the Whispering Snake Skull is very good. But again, it's a very rare drop, but always good to be hunting those snakes in the off chance that you'll actually get that snake skull. And just a note on the skill you need to craft the Berry Mash, Laxative, and Rattler Serum. You need the skill Folk Medicine to be able to craft these 2 things. So be sure to grab that. It's not too high up on the skill chain. So, before I go, I will mention one more kind of poisoning that you may encounter. Now, I told you about people trying to poison you by giving you poisoned mushrooms disguised as food, but there is another way that more recently has been implemented that people can try poisoning you, which is blow darts. Now, I won't get too much into blow darts, but you should be aware of blow darts. People are able to craft blow darts guns and darts themselves and poison you from afar. So if you're out in the wild and you get into combat, or you see someone holding something that looks like a blow dart, then you try to get away, because they could actually try and poison you from afar, which is not gonna be good. And the kinds of poisons I'm not too sure about right now, but none of them are gonna be good, are they? Alright, so that basically wraps up this episode on poisons. We went over shroom poisoning, Timber Rattler, venom, and also blow darts in the form of poisoning there. So that's about it. If you'd like to support the channel or support the game, do check out the referral link down in the description box down below. You know how a referral link works. And that's it. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.